So thank you for joining us for Caring for LGBTQ plus youth. My name is Addison Santese, and I'm going to be your moderator. I'm excited to be hosting this session today, and I'm excited to virtually see all of you. I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers, Tracy Self, Rebecca Reynolds, and Michael Morton. We will be using pronouns throughout this presentation, and we'll do a little bit of a discussion of what those are and how to use them. Tracy uses she, her pronouns, Rebecca uses she, her pronouns, and Michael uses they, them pronouns. So, to give you a little bit of context on your speakers, Tracy Self is a proud former Jeffco teacher and mother of 2 amazing daughters and 1 Zen super pup. Having worked as an advocate around social justice issues for 30 plus years, she now focuses on voices and experiences of the LGBTQIA plus students and families. And then moving on, originally from England, Rebecca Reynolds has lived in the US for over 20 years. Rebecca and her husband have 3 children as well as 4 dogs. It's a full house. They have 2 cisgendered sons, and their oldest child identifies as trans, feminine, and non-binary. If these terms are totally new to you, don't stress out. Our wonderful presenters will cover this with you tonight. When she's not advocating, you will find Rebecca hiking in the hills with her dogs, working in the garden, cooking up something in her kitchen, or hang out with family and friends. And then finally, having stumbled through the LGBTQIA plus landscape, trying on various identities in succession, our final presenter, Michael, arrived in a transgender non-binary space, settling on a genderqueer identity. Michael was emboldened in their gender journey by the expansive work of LGBTQIA plus youth over the past couple of decades. Further, as a single white adoptive parent to a cis hetero Vietnamese American young man, Michael recognizes the youth phenomenon as both broad-based and intersectional. Again, if these words are new to you, don't worry, they will be covered. So today, Tracy, Rebecca, and Michael will be talking about using a strengths-based framework so we can work together to help raise healthy kids. As a reminder, today's presentation, along with all of the presentations from this conference, will be available on demand after the live session for the next 30 days. So if you missed anything from any of the other presentations, you can go back and rewatch them. And then before I hand the mic over, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, very important, I would like to thank our sponsors and presenters who have helped make this event possible today. It's a true community effort to put this together. Thank you, Jeffco Public Schools, Rotary Club of Golden, Delta Dental, Westminster Medical Clinic, Source Communication, and Jeffco PTA for your support. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the Q&A tab all the way over on the right-hand side of your screen, up in the top corner. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session, but we will also be open to answering questions throughout. So if you have a question, please feel free to send one over. And if we don't get to your question, or if you would like to ask additional questions, we encourage you to attend the Q&A session with our speakers from 8:30 to 9 p.m. tonight. And if you experience any technical difficulties, please email us at webmaster@jcmh.org and we'll be able to help. I'll drop that link into our chat here so it's easy to access. And finally, at the end of the presentation, please fill out the session evaluation by clicking the link that I will put into the chat. Your feedback is very, very important to us, and it helps us plan for future conferences. So without further ado, finally, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Tracy, Rebecca, and Michael. Over to y'all. And I will pull up the presentation.
Thank you, Addison. So my name is Tracy, and I am blessed to be a part of this work, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with you all. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to work with Michael and Rebecca, 2 of the most amazing human beings on the planet, and we are blessed and excited to be able to do this work. So that said, We are JESCO, Jefferson Safe Schools Coalition. We started a couple years ago. Michael and I were introduced by the fine folks of the Student Engagement Office in Jeffco Public Schools together, which was really lovely. And then with One Colorado, Rainbow Alley, and a few other organizations, we started making connections. And one of our first and bestest was with Miss Rebecca. And we have been doing this as a passion project for a long time. So thank you for that opportunity. Okay, so for the next slide, Addison, are you going? So we'll go to the next slide. I'm not sure how to do that. Thank you. So this session is caring for LGBTQIA+ youth, and this is our second year doing this presentation, and so obviously it's super important, and we're glad you're here. Next slide. So this is kind of the rough structure of what we're going to be doing today. Please know that we've got wiggle room, and we love to talk, and we really would love to be in the same room with you all, but considering what's going on, we appreciate this opportunity. We'll go through our introductions, we just did. We'll go through a group agreements. We'll talk some about terminology. Who are our LGBTQIA+ youth? What do I do if my child comes out as LGBTQ+? What does caring look like? Okay, next slide. We'll talk about gender creative youth. We'll talk about their transitions. It's more than just one direction, right? It's social, it's legal, it's medical, it's spiritual. We'll talk about navigating systems such as school. If you have a GSA, we'll tell you what those fancy letters stand for. Dress codes, we'll talk about trainings. We'll talk about navigating networks, family, work, social, faith, online. We'll talk about resources both locally, nationally, and online, which are really helpful nowadays. And then we'll have a 30-minute Q&A session on the back end. So hopefully you all will join us there, because we would love to answer your questions. Okay. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you for being here. This is a safe, brave space, and by that we mean that we welcome you into this. We're here as sincere folks who want to learn and to share our experiences and to learn from each other. And with that, I'll turn that over to Rebecca.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, Addison, please? Lovely, thank you. So this is us, as Tracy just explained. The Safe Schools Coalition started a couple of years ago. We are parents, we're caregivers, we're students, educators, community members, and we, in times pre-COVID, would be meeting once a month, always with our amazing coalition members, always to center the voices and the experiences of the LGBTQIA+ youth within our school district. We could go to the next slide, please. Our group agreements just for this session, which are more sort of valid, I think, when we're in person all together, but and we're all interacting. But please, our stories stay and our personal information stay in the space. Please take all the lessons that you learn with you. We're grateful that you're here with us. We like to, make space for each other in all of our identities as we take on this work. One voice at a time. That makes it easy when it's just us up here chatting to you. Please make no assumptions. It's very important. It's something that we focus on a lot, not making assumptions about people's identities, their orientations, who they are without asking. Get to know people genuinely and be genuinely curious while you're educating yourself. Please listen for understanding, and please be kind in your thoughts. Yeah.
And we won't ask you to leave.
Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Okay, so when we're talking about intersectional identities, it's important to recognize that our youth, whether they're LGBTQIA+ or some other identity, may have multiple identities. They're not just a queer person or a trans person. They're all marginalized in some way, but many of us have multiple marginalized identities, which creates greater social disparity and challenges within our various social systems. And there's some examples of identities you probably can add to this list, but race, ethnicity, religion, neurotypicality, is that the right way to say that? Economy, age, housing, physical ability are just some of the various identities that we have. So for example, you can be autistic and trans, or lesbian and Catholic. You could probably think of all kinds of other identities. Can you move on to the next slide? Okay, it's important for us to recognize that privilege comes with being cisgender and or heterosexual. So we live in a society where binary gender and heterosexual relationships are normalized. What does it look like and feel like to raise a child whose life experience is different to yours? I think we're going on to Tracy now, yeah? Oh,
Sure. Yep. So this is one of my favorite quotes. So that's what we're thinking about, what Michael just said, right? How do we raise a child who is different, whose experience is different from us, right? They're different, right? All of our children are just parts, are different than us. And it's really important for us as adults who know so much and who learn so much that we unlearn a few things, right? And kind of make space for our children to be themselves, right? And so this is one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou, bless her. Do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better, right? And so that's a good mantra, if you will. And that's whether you are a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you are a sibling, whether you're a caretaker, a caregiver, any relationship, right? You want to honor that child and that youth and that person. And it's really important that we go into this space with a sincerity of giving grace and dignity and respect to everyone involved. And that also has to do with ourselves, right? So it's not just giving those to other people, but to give yourself some grace too, right? But to know when you could probably do better, and then do it. All right, next slide. So take care of yourself. So this is a big deal, right? So not only, it's just like in the airlines, right? In the airplanes, when they're like, oh, you got to put on your face mask before you put on someone else's, right? It's a similar thing here. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, right? This is a big deal. This could be a harder path to follow for some. It could be a relatively easy path for others, but just know that you need to take care of yourself as well, right? You center your child. The child is the most important thing, right? But you've got to take care of yourself so you can take care of your child, and you are your child's best advocate. And so really take that to heart and know that no one else probably is going to, that child would be blessed if someone else loved them as much as you love your child. And right, just keep that in mind. You're going to need to learn a lot. You'll need to breathe, go easy on yourself, be present with your emotions. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way, right? We all have implicit bias. We all have these experiences that we have kind of accumulated within our cells and our brains that we share, and we make judgments and we use certain phrasing and we have all kinds of things that we're not even aware of. So it's kind of important, right? You're on a new journey as well. Is everyone okay with that? Does everyone feel good with that? I want to just check in. Does anyone want to comment? Okay, all right. So let Addison know if you want to ask any of us a question as we go along. And I think I'm going to hand this over to Rebecca, talk about some terminology.
So we have one more. Can I do this one? Do you want to do this?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. So again, it's following on from what Tracy was just saying, again, under that topic of, your child, you being your child's best advocate. And, these questions about how are you handling this scenario? How are you handling how your child's identifying or they're coming out? Are you tolerating? Are you accepting? Are you celebrating these changes in your family? And for different families, that's going to look very different. And like Tracy said, we're all coming to this scenario with different lived experience. We're all coming with different biases, with, your race, your culture, your ethnicity, your religious background, your socioeconomic background. All of these things factor very much into how this looks for your family. What we're asking and what we you understand as best practice is that when we center our child, when we're asking ourselves, is everything that we're doing supporting our child in this process? That's where everybody wins, because however challenging any of this might be for you, it is 10 times more challenging for your child, and working together as a family is so important. The data proves categorically that having a supportive adult can change the trajectory completely of a young person's life. All right, we go to the next slide, please. Addison, are you there? Will we move on?
I think she's doing a little bit of a technical issue right now. Right. And that's true. So I would say that there are lots of ways to be supportive of your child. And we're going to get to those later on in the presentation. But it's a really, you never know what one kind word will do, right? Or how you can how you will support that kiddo. I just shifted. So I think Addison is reloading the presentation right now. So that's what's happening right now. Okay. But it's what I'm going to mean is that when you interact with anyone, you're pretty impactful. And so it's really a wonderful thing to be aware of how much you can help, right? A little bit of love goes a long way. Not to sound
very long way
silly. And so, as Rebecca had said earlier, we do have, in pre-COVID times, we would have meetings at Creighton Middle School. We would meet once a month. We would have presentations, and we'll continue to do this. And we're looking at having online meetings as well. But when those click back up again, you are welcome to join us. And we have presenters from organizations who are youth serving folks all over Jefferson County, from Jefferson Center Mental Health to in Colorado, to the folks from this Jeffco Public Schools that come and see us. We have a lot of participation, Jeffco Public Health, Jeffco Public Libraries. So we're pretty connected with some really amazing people, including lots of families and youth. And we would love to welcome you back either at Creighton Middle School in person one day or online. And at the end of this presentation, we'll give you our information so you can sign up for our monthly newsletter if you're interested. It might be helpful. Okay. All right, Addison. I think we are we good?
I saw magic a minute ago.
Yes.
There we go.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Addison, for working so hard behind the scenes, making it happen.
So sorry for all of the technical difficulties. I am transitioning to the updated version of the PowerPoint. I believe we are on terminology, or are we further along?
You are right on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So some terminology here, some things you may be familiar with, some things may be new. Please get in the chat if you want us to slow down or you need a little bit more information about some of this terminology. It's a little hard to know who we have in the space at the moment without seeing all your beautiful faces out there. So we'll just do a quick run through so that we can spend more time on some of the more best practice pieces. But sexual orientation, so sexual orientation, I can read through these, or should we just highlight for right now?
I think so.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. So sexual orientation is an attraction. Who are you attracted to? Romantic orientation. So many people identify as all these terminology down at the bottom: aromantic, homoromantic, heteroromantic, biromantic, panromantic, demiromantic. These are terms that will be new to a lot of people. And there's so many terms that are appearing, and that folks are choosing to identify with these days. Romantic attraction means that you don't have a sexual attraction to another person, but you do have this romantic connection. Very important to understand that sexual orientation and gender identity are two very separate things. If we could go to the next slide, we can look at some of the terminology there, please.
And I would say that a lot of this terminology is new to the adults.
Yes,
most of the
very
youth
much so.
are we're trying to catch up.
So there is a difference between our sex and our gender. Sex is something that we are classified with at birth. So we either are given a label of male or female or intersex, and that's it. A trajectory in life is set for us at that point. Our gender identity is how we feel internally. That is not the sex that we are given. So sex is a biological classification. Our gender, the gender piece here, the social construct that informs or tells a person how to behave or act or dress, that is what we're reading from other people in a culture or in a society that is being created. Our gender identity is very much our internal sense of who we are, and the way we express is our gender expression. So how do we show that we are who we are? By the way we dress, by the way we wear our hair, what we do, how we walk, how we talk, all of those things. So if we could move on to the next one, please. So when you misgender somebody, you identify them with incorrect pronouns. This is an incredibly hurtful thing. Often it's done mistakenly. Sometimes if it's done on purpose, it is just abhorrent, and can be extremely painful for the recipient. The term cisgender means that you are, I identify as female. I was given a female sex identification when I was born. I am cisgender. If I'm transgender, I do not identify with the sex that I was assigned at birth. And that can be, as it says down here, typically does include non-binary, gender non-conforming, and all other gender-expansive people. So the term transgender is very much considered an umbrella term to encompass all sorts of different identities. Do either of you have anything to add to that piece? Or?
I think you're doing beautifully.
Lovely.
Right.
I love this slide. This is a beautiful slide. There we go. That's what we're
We
about.
love
Love.
We're lucky. Right. So most people consider that term transgender to be either, a binary term, right? Male or female, right? And that's what a lot of times you hear that term. Most people understand that to be, but it is, like Rebecca said, an umbrella term that will include all the different identities that are not binary and cis. Okay, Michael, you're up next.
So what do I do if my child comes out as LGBTQIA+? I think you can start by letting them know you love them. That doesn't change when they come out. A lot of times people will feel uncertain about how they're going to be received. So it's good to come from that place right away. So it's not, the message isn't ambiguous. And then you can follow through with that by using the same terminology that your child uses to describe themselves. So if your child uses the word queer, please use the word queer. Or non-binary, make a note of it and make sure you use that word. If your child doesn't want to use the label, labels aren't for everybody. Even if they're in a same gender relationship or wearing clothes that don't appear to match the gender they were assigned at birth, that's the way they're expressing themselves, and it's okay. Should we try the next one? Am I doing this one? I forget.
Yep. Oh, wait, I can do this one. Sorry, we have it all listed. So if you feel your child is LGBTQIA+, don't pressure them to admit it. All right? You hear people like, oh, I knew all along. Well, right, it's not about you. Don't pressure them to admit it, right? They're on their journey and you just need to be there ready to support, right? Some people don't question their sexuality or gender until later in life. And others figure it out while they're young, but don't feel ready to come out to their parents or anyone else for many years. And that's okay. And it could be because they want to keep it private. They may be concerned if they're really in a safe environment. Who knows, right? But don't pressure them. Just be and love them. And don't assume it's just a phase, right? Be aware that sexuality and gender can be fluid for some people their entire life, or just for certain parts of their lives. And labels sometimes change. No matter what, the important part is that you accept and believe what your teen says about their own identity and know that there's nothing you can do to change it, right? So the important part, I'll repeat that, is to accept and believe what your teen says about their own identity, right? And you love them.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about that?
No, I just was going to say, just not teen. I mean, we have really young children coming out, and in my advocacy work so far, I mean, certainly as far as trans, the youngest family that I've mentored, their child was 3, and the oldest person I've had was 78 coming out as trans. And so there is an enormous spectrum of age. This is a very different journey for every single person.
And nowadays, it's much different than 20 or 30 years ago, right? So there's more representation in the media. People are having more conversations. We're having these trainings and sessions. And so children kind of know, and we're all learning, right, that it's to create a more accepting and nurturing environment. So if you have a 3-year-old who tells you, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, or, you know, or an 8-year-old or 9-year-old's like, oh, I think I like boys or girls, they know who they are, right? Especially with the gender piece. And so just trust that. Just trust it.
It's not easy, but trust it.
Right, and it's a big deal that they've come out to share that with you.
Yeah.
It's a huge honor.
So, sorry.
Good.
So, oh, can we go back one more? Sorry, I didn't quite get to it.
There you go.
Isn't this the next one? Oh, there we go. So this is about, you know, respecting your child and who they want to come out to. This journey looks very, very different for different people. Some people really do want to keep it private. They're not ready to come out to everybody after they've come out to close people. It is really important that you are not determining who your child comes out to. And as it says here, encouraging your child to hide their identity may send a message that you don't approve of them. Everybody manages this in a completely different way. And it really is your job to take the lead, your child's lead, let them lead with what they're comfortable with. Handling young children, it's their coming out can be a little bit different. It really depends on each and every situation. What they need most from you is your support, your understanding, and following their lead. Is this you, Tracy? I'm not sure, sorry.
I think, sure. Do help them figure out how to come out to people, right? Discuss different choices. If you judge a situation to be unsafe, or if coming out didn't go according to plan, right? So there is a lot of experience that you have in negotiations, understanding environment, relationships with people, things that you have learned that are really important in supporting your kiddo and keeping them safe. Exercising good judgment around coming out is a skill that your child will need throughout life. Helping them now will show you love them and are there for them. And you might want to consider the term private instead of secret when you talk about those identities, right? It's harder for, I don't know if you would say there's a sense of shame, like you have a secret, right? Like no one can know, like something's bad about it, right? And it's not that, it's private. it's your personal business, right? It's who you are, and you get to share that when you want to share that. And so that's it. And then the last one we have here is people use humor a lot to try to connect with folks, to say they understand or to diffuse any kind of tension or worry. But don't ever make a joke or impolite comments, right, that center around one's LGBTQIA+ identity, right? It could be someone who's feeling uncomfortable and they're trying to make a connection and they make some joke, but it's not really funny. So try to make that connection in other ways. Michael, Rebecca, do y'all have anything else to add to that?
I think we all might want to take a moment to consider who is in our social network, our extended family, and sort of think ahead of our kids, especially the younger kids or kids who are otherwise maybe more vulnerable, and think about who might be more likely to be accepting and who not, and be prepared to face whatever happens. You might be pleasantly surprised, and then there are other possibilities as well. So just be aware that you might be in for a challenging time, depending on who that relative is and what their beliefs are.
Mm-hmm. I think you can also be really surprised. Some people who you would have thought was going to be an uphill battle can be amazing, and I think it runs that spectrum. I think you're right. It's good to prepare.
Okay, I think if we can go back one, Addison, one slide. All right, Rebecca, we'll turn this over to you.
Sure. So gender identity, all about how you feel inside and how you show your gender through your appearance and behavior. You're a feeling that begins early in life. There is data from the American Academy of Pediatrics that say by 3, we all really know who we are inside. And it's amazing when you think about that and how young that is, but that's definitely what we're seeing, younger and younger children recognizing who they are and having parents who listen to when they speak up. Excuse me. Not everyone's gender identity is the same as the sex on their birth certificate. That means that not everyone who has a penis is a boy or a man, and not everyone who has a vulva is a girl or a woman. And that's where we get back to that first slide earlier on about no assumptions. We really should never be making assumptions about each other.
And we have to unlearn a lot that we've learned and we think we know, right?
That we've known to be true, right?
We know, because we were, we know it, right? So medicine and science always discovering new truths, right? And how things work in.
Right, and questioning the cultural norms that we have become so familiar with when it's not necessarily the lived human experience of people we love.
Well said. Exactly.
Could we go to the next slide, please?
So I think this is Rebecca still, yeah.
Sorry, okay, so gender identity isn't about what kind of anatomy that you have, as we were just saying, and asking specific questions of transgender and gender non-conforming folks about their bodies, or about whether they want surgery, or about whether they've had surgery. It is never okay. It is insulting and it's demeaning, and it should just be an off-topic completely.
Right, you wouldn't talk about that with your cisgender friends, right? It's not appropriate. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so what about stereotypes? And what about being inclusive? So we're familiar with what we call the binary. The world gets separated into masculine or feminine. In more recent times, pink is identified with women. In the past, it was more identified with men. So a lot of these things are really arbitrary. And yet when my own son was confronted by this truth about the color pink, which he used to love, he felt like he had to stop loving that color. So these ideas are actually quite powerful. They affect us very deeply. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, though, about their actual gender identity or sexual orientation or whether they're intersex or not. It just means, usually, unfortunately, that they're limiting for people to have to live with these stereotypes, and actually prevents people from living their truth. Using inclusive language is critical for, well, really all LGBTQIA+ people, but especially our young people who are more vulnerable, I think. Using the term students rather than boys and girls in a classroom can be an example of being more inclusive. One way to be more inclusive. Child instead of son or daughter can be another example. Can we go to the next one? I think this is for Tracy, right?
I think it's still yours, Michael, if that's it, or I can do this one.
No, I'm fine to keep going. I'm
okay.
Sorry if I'm on a different.
Oh no, yeah, we have a
trajectory
with slide numbers that go through on this presentation, so we're
okay. Yeah. So terminology, yes. So people talk about transphobia, homophobia, biphobia. Sometimes it gets lumped together into queerphobia because there's so many words. But anyway, the idea is that it's the fear and or hatred of transgender, gender nonconforming, any of the LGBTQIA+ identities. It manifests as the belief that people are delusional about their own truth, that they're doing something against nature, or that they're trying to trick people. And all of that's actually quite dangerous because it actually supports people who are more committed to persecuting. Because we know from documentation of hate crimes and that sort of thing, LGBTQIA+ people face discrimination and violence, and even more so if they're people of color or living at other intersections. So parents, of course, do play a crucial role in, forestalling some of the violence. So you need to talk with your child about how it's important to respect and defend transgender, gender-expansive, and gender nonconforming people from violence and hate. Let them know that it's never okay to bully someone because of how they express their gender. And then also talk to them about if they are being bullied or if they feel that they're at risk of being bullied, how they want to respond to that situation, what was supportive for them to prevent being targeted in that way.
Okay, so I instead of starting on this slide real quick, I wanted to check in. Michael and Rebecca, do we have intersex on that terminology slide?
No.
Okay, so I wanted to have that, I just want to take a second to talk about being intersex. So far we've talked about gender identity, we've talked about sexual orientation and the different pieces of the LGBTQIA+ alphabet soup that our friend Carrie talked about. So intersex is a kind of a different identity in and of itself, right? Michael or Rebecca, do you want to talk about, are you up for just sharing quickly about intersex identity?
So to me, one of the best ways to understand this distinction is that it's really all about biology. Gender identity, sexual orientation, those are operating at a different level than just how your body is shaped and how your body is targeted for intervention based on the way it was formed. And so what that includes, I think, up to 120 different situations or conditions that lead to unexpected differences in hormones, the shape of genitalia, and other things that are often identified at birth as not looking like what a doctor or a parent might expect a male body or a female body should look. Because there are so many different conditions that can result in an intersex condition, it actually refers to a broad range of biological differences, all of which deviate from this kind of biological binary. And again, this is totally distinct from a person's gender identity. Does that work for you? Does that help?
That was awesome.
Beautiful. You always explain it so much better. I was like, Michael. So that's true.
I didn't used to actually, but I think I'm getting better.
You're awesome. You're amazing. And so thank you for that, Michael. And so that is, a lot of times people don't know they have that particular identity until later in life, right? Okay, so thank you for taking a little side path there. I just wanted to make sure that we covered that because that's really important. All right, so because we want to make sure that all folks are included, right? And so that's a different identity that is included in the LGBTQIA+, right? So we make sure that we include that. So we talked a little bit about how you can support your kiddo if they come out as LGBTQIA+, and what we meant, the general umbrella term for orientation and also gender, but here we're going to talk about specifically about gender, right? Because there are some, that's a little bit different. So this umbrella term that we're talking about, it includes many different identities that relate to biology, sexual orientation, gender identity, all these different identities that are kind of in that same category, but are uniquely different, right? So you can have someone with multiple LGBTQIA+ identities. Right. So that said, for the families who do, and teachers and educators who have a kiddo who comes out as transgender or gender expansive, and I think that's the best term to use, gender expansive, right? Even the term non-conforming, within it has kind of a connotation that it's not normal, or right, doesn't conform to what's supposed to be. So we try to use that term gender expansive. Gender identity is something that forms early in life. True, usually between the ages of 3 and 5. That's a big deal, right? And we think about it, we gender our children in utero right? Before they even come out. And apparently we
blow things up,
on fire, and all sorts of crazy things to let people know what their child is going to be. But if you think about that, right, in a way, we're kind of boxing them in. And we are determining with those stereotypes what they can be, who they shall be, and what we allow, if you will, them to be. Whenever it is that they choose to come out to you, those sweet little kiddos, they need your love and support, right? So when they choose to come out to you, not you pushing it for it, right? When they come out to you, they need your love and support. They may just be coming out to you now. And this is one of the most important pieces, I think. They may just be coming out to you now, but they've been thinking about this for much longer, right? So it's new to you, and it might be new to your spouse or to your dad or to whomever in your family, right? This is new to you, but they've been thinking about it for a long time, and they have finally gathered the courage and feel safe enough and want to trust you with that information and want you to be a part of that journey to some extent, right?
And I think that's for whether folks are coming out, you know, in their sexual orientation that they're sharing with you, or whether it's their gender identity. And I do think it's really important. Tracy and I have talked a lot about this, you know, their coming out is very often your coming in. So they have been thinking about this for a very long time. They've been feeling off. They've been feeling things that they didn't have words for. So giving yourself that grace to understand that you're going to be playing catch up. Especially around the sort of when young people have access to more information. I know when my daughter came out, I was not ignorant about transgender folks, but she was 10 steps ahead of me. She knew so much more than I did, and I had some catch up to do for sure. So giving yourself some grace in that is a good thing too.
Yeah. All right. So what do I do if my jumps? Okay, so do tell your transgender or gender expansive child, just your child, right? Just tell your child that you love them, right? And so I know we're repeating a little bit from before, but we're kind of centering on gender now. So just know that you love them and make sure they hear it and feel it and know it, right? Not just words, but actions and deeds, that they feel it. They need to hear this from you and know that you see them for who they are and love them as they are. And do use the pronouns and name your child wants, right? So changing your name and pronouns, whether it's like from he to she, to match your gender identity is a common form of coming out, right? And you'll even see sometimes where you might have a child come out as gay or lesbian or bi first as they're trying to figure it out, and then they'll come out to eventually possibly as gender expansive or transgender, right? Because they're trying to figure it out too, right? It's all new stuff. And they know something's just not quite aligned with what they've been told, right? What they've learned, if you will. So accept pronouns, use pronouns. If your child says my pronouns are he, him, then don't call them, him, she, or they, them. And you might make a mistake, but you need to get practicing that, right? So just practice. Tell a story in your head. Just talk out loud when you're in private. She went to the beach. He went to the beach. He got a present. He turned 8 years old. He went with us. Just practice that stuff, right? Practice it. But use the pronouns that they want. And that could change. That could change, right? And that's okay. And use the pronouns and the name that child wants, right? Because it's hurtful when you don't. Now, he, him, his, and she, her, hers are not the only gender pronouns around, right? There are other gender nonconforming or gender expansive people who use they, them, theirs, like that amazing human right there, who we adore. These are theirs. I don't know how many. Do y'all know how many different new pronoun sets there are? Is it like 40, 50?
I don't know.
I remember being at a meeting down in the Springs with Michael and somebody from the university in the Springs. Is it UCCS or something? Yes, whatever.
Inside Out.
Yeah. They were talking about how they were trying to navigate it on the university campus when they had applications from over 300 different forms of pronouns, and they were trying to navigate. So yes, I can't imagine that there won't be more, that people will be, these amazingly creative people will come up with different ones. But yeah.
Right.
It wasn't like that when I went to college.
I do just want to reiterate how important it is to really use the pronouns that your child is asking you to use. And a very wise person once said to me that it's like being kicked in the shin. When somebody is using the wrong pronouns, they're not seeing you for who you are. And it's like being kicked in the shin. It stings, it hurts, but you get on with your day. If that is happening 10 times a day, you've got a bruise by the end of the day. If that's happening 10 times a day all week, very quickly you've got a wound, and then it gets infected. And I thought it was just a very good analogy, because I think some people don't take it as seriously as they should, but it really is a painful experience for your child, because it means you're not seeing them truly for who they are. So respecting the terminology, the identity, and the pronouns that they're using, as well as their name, is a really, really significant step to them moving forward and being allowed to be themselves.
And I would add to this is that if you do have a family member or someone who uses the wrong pronouns with your child, you need to let them know that that's not okay. Say, oh, they use they, them pronouns, or he uses he, him pronouns. So you have to speak up, right? Because we're the adults and we need to do whatever we can to protect our youth. And so sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you need to figure out what is the most, you don't want to shame anyone and you don't want to embarrass your child, but that's something, it's hard to navigate, but figuring out, if you go through with the mentality of you're centering your child, right, everything you do is to fill their basket, right, is to support them, then that kind of gives you a North Star. Okay. All right. Rebecca, I think it is.
So making sure that you're using correct terminology and terminology that is not insulting is actually really important. And sometimes this is all new verbiage, so it's important to know what's appropriate and what's not. So not using words like transgendered, transvestite, tranny, or he, she. They are outdated, and they're considered derogatory and hurtful. And asking, extended family members, teachers, whoever, to not use those words is important as well. Transgendered, you hear a surprising amount. It infers that something happened to somebody to make them transgender, and that's just not the case. They are who they are. My daughter likes to say, I didn't wear basketball shorts and hang around with boys, and then boom, one day I woke up and I was transgendered. This is who I am. I've always been who I am, and so yeah, it's really important that that you're using the right terminology. Assuming that your child is going through a phase is something that a lot of parents do. It's really important not to assume that. Listen to your child. As we said earlier, listen and believe. They are not necessarily too young. This may evolve. Their identity may well evolve. But as we said before, our identities are usually pretty set when we're very young. Don't act like it's a mental health condition. This is really important. Trans and gender non-conforming folks, they are not delusional. They don't need mental health counseling for who they are. They may suffer from mental health or mental illness, like depression, anxiety, but often that is as a result of not being accepted, not being believed, or because of violence, discrimination, harassment that they experience just in their everyday lives.
Or even just beings face mental health challenges sometimes.
I'm so sorry, say that again.
Even just that human beings face mental health challenges sometimes.
All humans.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. So it's just part of the human condition. It's not necessarily part of the transgender condition or whatever else.
It's true. Just this year alone.
Yes, for all of us.
It's true. Thank you, Michael. All right. We good to move on? All right.
Yeah.
Michael, is that you?
Yeah. Okay. So just want to make sure I'm on the right page here. I think it's the next one, yeah? Or is this the one?
Is it, sorry, no, back one, I think, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. So what about if your child comes out as transgender or gender expansive or non-binary or any one of a number of identities that you may or may not have heard of before? So the key here is no matter what identity kids are working with, you need to respect your child's wishes about who they want to come out to. This is the same message we gave earlier, but it's a good one to repeat. People choose to come out to everyone in their lives, and some prefer, I'm sorry, I'm not reading it very well. Some prefer to tell only a few people. It's up to your child to decide that, but you're also performing a supportive role, especially depending on the age of your child. Encouraging your child to hide their true self sends a message of disapproval, possibly shame. And so you need to do your best to support your child in their choices, while also supporting them to be safe, depending on the situation. When you help them to so you do help them to figure out how to come out as well as who to come out to. There's different ways that they might do that, depending on the situation again. Especially to think about what if things don't go as planned. And this helps with skill building. Coming out is a skill, among other things, and you can do it well, and you can experience a feeling of success with it even if it isn't easy. So helping them now will show you love them and are there for them, but it also will allow them to be empowered and to function independently as an LGBTQIA+ person.
I think it's also really important to acknowledge because coming out just doesn't happen once. Queer folks are coming out all the time, throughout their entire life, to different people. It's not just a one-time thing that happens, whether you're coming out to a doctor or at work, or it's just a continual journey throughout life.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and so continuing on with that discussion, you wouldn't accuse your child of being overly sensitive about something as important as a core identity. They're going to have feelings, just like you have feelings about the things that are core to who you are. They have the right to express when something is hurtful, and depending on their age, they may or may not be able to explain why it's hurtful. The information you may have to work with is just that it is hurtful, and that's important that you just receive it as it's delivered. Doesn't mean you can't talk about it, but they need to feel heard. And it's a good thing when young people stand up for themselves. If you receive their truth, that's going to support them to do that effectively. You also can support them by advocating for them. And you might find that that takes you to places that you never thought of before.
Yeah.
Rebecca's got her hand up.
In a very positive way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next slide, Addison, thank you. All right, so this one, when our kids come out as LGBTQIA+, right, especially around gender identity, because that's kind of a newer, it's not new, it's been since the beginning of humanity, right? And certain cultures kind of are more accepting and some cultures kind of crush that, right? But gender identity has become more popular as far as a topic that people feel a little more comfortable talking about, right? There's more media representation. There's conversations in the classrooms. You see more books for children that are geared towards these topics in the bookstore. You see all sorts of things, which is really lovely, as all sorts of the different lenses of diversity are shared, and we really try to understand the experiences of all of our neighbors and friends and folks that we see at the grocery store, right? So that's a really great thing. And it can be worrying and overwhelming, right? Especially for those folks who worry a lot, and it's a new frontier for so many. But please remember that being transgender or gender expansive is not a tragedy, right? It doesn't mean your child will live a lonely life or be hurt wherever they go, okay? In fact, coming out and transitioning is the beginning of a freer and truer self for many people, and it's something to celebrate, right? Living your truth is important to who you are. And no matter what, we all face our challenges, and we have different challenges to face. But just have faith in that. Don't be overwhelmed. There's lots of resources, and you're not alone in this path. And I'm not sure what else to say. What do you think? That little message.
I think you're right. I think
Yeah.
I look at my daughter's transition and look at the courage and integrity that she has shown to live a truly authentic life. And it's quite remarkable when I see these young people making their transitions, and they are so much freer and happier as their really truly authentic selves. It's a beautiful, amazing, wonderful thing to behold.
Okay, Addison, next space. It's creating safe spaces. All right, so how do I create a safe space for my LGBTQIA child, right? So we've talked about terminology, we've talked about what to do in different ways, how we can support them, right? So, but how about the physical space, right? What is a safe space? Or you could say safer space, you'll hear that term as well. A safe space is a place where your queer child can be themselves without fear, of any type of bullying, harassment, or violence. It's a place where the people around them, which means you, as well as the people in charge, agree that negative behavior and attitudes towards LGBTQIA+ people is unacceptable. Right? That's in your home. That includes your family who come and who may not be friendly. Like, don't accept, and that's a hard one, right? Your home is a safe space for your child, and you have to protect that. That means that your homophobic mom can't come have dinner at your house with your child there and just say whatever they want, right? What she wants. That means that you have to protect that space, because if they are not safe in that space, what do they have, right? And that's your responsibility. And so that's hard, and you can find support and strength through different friends, through people who've gone through the same experience, but just know that they need you to do that. And that's, I think, one of the harder things for a lot of folks to do, right, is to set those boundaries when it involves our family, right? So there you go. So home needs to be a safe place for your child to grow. Oh, can we go back real quick? Sorry, Addison. To explore their interests and work towards their hopes and dreams, right? So they have a slightly different set of needs when it comes to feeling safe, secure, and supported home. Thank you, Addison. Okay, next slide.
So following on from what Tracy was saying, I think a lot of adults don't necessarily trust that their children or know what they want or they need. I know certainly that I needed to learn that, but asking your child what they need from you, how you can support them, I think you will be very often very surprised by what they know and how they ask you for help. Asking them about their friends, welcoming their queer friends into your home. They absolutely need to spend time with folks within the community. I think that was something that, again, I really had to learn. My kid really needed to spend time around other queer folks, and I had to learn to trust other queer adults in that space too, to know that they were going to take care of her and provide good influences, which they absolutely have. Meet anyone that your child is dating. Talk to them normally. Ask them questions. Offer them a sandwich. There is no reason for this for you to even hiccup in that step. Just, your home needs to be a safe space, and they need to feel like there is no difference between their straight friends or their queer friends coming into your home. When you're checking in about relationships, it is really important to just keep those channels of communication really open. Letting them wear the clothes they want to wear, expressing themselves is a huge part of allowing them to grow up and be who they are. Reading books, watching shows and movies about LGBTQIA characters. We're getting more and more of those shows now, which is lovely, and more movies, but it's really important for them to see that representation in media, and we can't be what we can't see. So those things are really important for our children to be able to experience. Making sure they're safe online, again, that's just keeping those open channels of communication, and checking in with each other.
Okay, next slide. Michael, it's up to you.
Okay, so how do I create a safe space for my child? Talk with them about safer sex and birth control. Even lesbian and gay teens should know about how pregnancy happens and how to prevent it, because many LGBTQIA plus identified young people have sex that can put them at risk of unplanned pregnancy at some point. Make it known that homophobic, transphobic, biphobic speech, including jokes, are not acceptable in your home. And look for signs of depression or self-harm. And if you notice any, ask your child how they're doing and if they want to speak with a therapist or a counselor.
Perfect.
Shall I continue? No.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure.
There may be places that aren't safe for your child if they're out or dress in non-conforming ways. Some kids can pass as their assigned gender or as their true gender, but some kids will never pass. Making rules about where they can go and what they can wear can make them feel unaccepted. Keep an open dialogue with your child about their safety so you can help them navigate those spaces and figure out what's best for them. Telling your child, I want you to be able to express yourself how you're most comfortable, and I want us to figure out together how you can do that safely. That will show you love and respect them, and that you're there to help figure out challenges with them. They're sort of co-creating that safe solution. And obviously it has to be age appropriate. So.
Right. Okay. So how about school? So we've gone over, I'm just looking at time check. We've got an hour 11, so about just under 20 minutes left. So we're going to talk about school, right? So that's where we get nervous about, right? Everyone, that's just a place, right? Because they're away from our home for 8 hours a day in normal times. And then now occasionally, depending on your learning plan, they may only be in school 1 day or 2 days, but they still need to be safe in the physical building and also online, whether it's Google Meet, Zoom meetings, etc. Right? So doing well in school is hard when you're worried about being hurt or bullied. I think that's a truth we can all accept, or when you don't feel respected by your teachers, coaches, and mentors. When it comes to making school a safe place for your child, you can do a lot. And I would just like to acknowledge this again, that that's for our LGBTQIA plus youth, and those youth also have other identities where they may feel unsafe, if it's because of their religion, or because of the color of their skin, their culture, the language they speak. And when we think about making it safe and for our kiddos, and just by who they are and how they were born, let's just keep in mind that it's a bigger picture, right? I just want to keep that in mind. So ask your child about their experiences at school. They may not tell you unless you ask. Whether they feel safe, if they're ever bullied or harassed, if they know other trans or gender expansive kiddos, and if the school has any type of LGBTQIA student groups, like a GSA. GSA stands for, historically, Gay Straight Alliance, right? But as language evolved and as we learn more, that terminology has come to mean Gender Sexuality Alliance, right? That's more kind of appropriate for what they think about. Okay, next slide. And if your school doesn't have a GSA, then try and find one. Help create one, right? You can help do that. A lot of times the sponsors are the counselors. That's just part of their work there. And don't be afraid to ask, right? There are other families who need the same type of service with their families that need that same opportunity. And that may look different. There are GSAs that are online now, right? And there are GSAs that kind of meet. It's harder now with the different learning plans because cohorts have to mix and whatnot. But there are opportunities for those kiddos to meet. There are lots of online support groups, and we'll get to some of those groups later. And of course, you can always access this for 30 days. So you don't have to write everything down. You can do screenshots if you want, if you think you might not go back. All right, so Jeffco Public School policies. Gender and name update form. It is fairly simple to do a quick change in campus in some of your forms. This is for a quick gender change and a name change, much like if you were to change your name due to a family restructuring. But it does not affect all the systems, and that's something that we are currently advocating for. If you feel like you would like to help advocate for that to make it more streamlined and more effective, protecting the privacy and respecting the wishes and the true identity of our students, please connect with us, and we're happy to do that. That is something that is an ongoing thing that we're working on for advocacy. So you can get a simple form, ask the secretary at your school, or you can call student records at the main Jeffco Ed building and say, I need to update my gender form or my name form, and that will change the preferred gender preferred name in the system, not your official record, because currently the only official record can be changed with a court order or a state or federally issued identification document, passport, birth certificate, things of that nature, right? And recently, the state of Colorado has updated the birth certificate, the procedures for updating your birth certificate. So that's a lot easier. Okay, and Social Security, you can do that for your passport as well. But it doesn't change it in all the systems. So even if you do that, just know that it's accessible for you right away. You can do that tomorrow if that's your family situation. You can do that tomorrow. And then it's a little more complicated as far as federal tests. Legal name still has to be on that. And if you haven't changed it, then that's kind of a thing. But know that we're all advocating for that, and you can be a part of that advocating and still protect the privacy of your family at the same time. Any comments, Michael or Rebecca, for that piece? To your name update form? Okay. Overnight trip policy. Currently, the overnight trip policy is not as foolproof, robust. How can I say this politely? Right, and that is something that we're advocating for. And please, we have spoken at the school board meetings. We talk with district folks all the time, and lots of folks who are on board. But we feel free to advocate for that as well. So currently, right now, there is a policy in place where. Well, the general policy, I'll just go right here. It says equal education. I'll go to the next line. Equal education opportunities. There's an actual policy that was, and you can find it on the board docs, boarddocs.com. And if you go into the search word transgender, this pops up. You can find it. It's called Equal Education Opportunities for Transgender Students. Now, we don't have space on here for all of that. You can look that up. But basically, it says that all the opportunities for cisgender students should be made the same for transgender students. Now, there are some gaps that we think are not acceptable, and that includes, so that means transgender students you have a transgender boy can play on the football team, basketball team has access to the boys' bathrooms and locker rooms, overnight trips has access to the same boys' dorms, all that type of stuff, right? That is the policy. Now, there are some occasions where that becomes a little more complicated, and we don't need to talk about that right now, but it needs to be, I think, improved upon, and we'd happy to talk to you more about that in depth. We don't have the time to go through it now, but you can look up this policy on your own. There you go. So our trans kiddos have equal access to education, and they don't have to go to the nurse's bathroom to use the bathroom, just like our cis students don't have to do that, right? They need to be in class just as much as anyone else, and they should have the same types of rights and access to any of those facilities, any of those opportunities. I think, what do you think, Michael, Rebecca? Any other?
That sounds
I think you're
Okay.
the expert on this, Tracy, so I'm really glad that you're handling it.
Thank you, Michael. So there is room for improvement, and there's room for improvement, and we're working on it. And just know that we center all of our youth equally, right? And that's our goal. Okay. So go ahead, next one. So here you go. Talk with your PTA. So there are things that you can do, right? Talk with the PTA, talk with your school admin, set your expectations and hold their feet to the fire. Honestly, they've got so much going on, right? Squeaky wheel gets the grease. You let them know, and your children have rights, right? They have rights written into local school policy, state law, federal law, and don't ever waver, right? So talk with your PTA and school admins about the policies around anti-LGBTQ bullying. If they don't have good policies, these organizations can help you advocate for new rules. And these are national organizations. Take a screenshot if you want. These are all great. And all sorts of resources, including online parent support, online teen youth group, younger kids, older kids, all sorts of things. Educators, places of faith. There are sections for these national organizations help you navigate those kind of conversations, right? So GLSEN is great. Welcoming Schools, Gender Spectrum, National Center for Transgender Equality, GLAD, and we have PFLAG on national level. Jeffco Safe Schools Children. We work hard for that. Okay, next slide. I love this. We just had to throw that in there, right? Right? It's usually your mama bear, papa bear, but you got all kind of, you got mama, papa. I know a ma pa. Their kiddos call them ma pa, right? All kinds of beautiful things, right? So this is how we love our babies. We protect.
I'll just jump in really quickly and let y'all know. I have talked with our event organizer, and we're going to keep everyone in here for the Q&A, so we can run this session all the way through 9 o'clock, and we'll be directing people to come into this session if they have additional questions. So keep running through your presentation.
Addison, that is so great. Okay, next slide. All right, Ms. Rebecca.
All right, so what legal protections does my student have? Queer folks, including students, have nearly comprehensive legal protection from discrimination and harassment in the state of Colorado. We really do have fairly robust policy. Sometimes, as Tracy was just talking about, there is a disconnect. What happens in policy isn't reflected necessarily in the culture of the spaces that our kids are spending time in school, and that's where you can get involved with that advocacy piece. So understanding what the protections are is actually really important. The broadest of these laws, discrimination in places of public accommodation, says it's discriminatory and unlawful for an individual or group to deny facilities, privileges, advantages, accommodations, etc. because of disability, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, national origin, or ancestry. And so this question here, did anyone notice an identity that's not listed in the law above? I can't quite remember the story, but somehow gender identity got included under sexual orientation, right? That in order to pass this bill through, it kind of got lumped in together, but there is specific protection for gender identity within this particular piece of legislation.
It's actually outlined as part of the definition of sexual orientation. It was kind of like sneaking your veggies in for the kiddos, right? And so that's actually what happened. They did that on purpose. I'm assuming from the stories. That was intentional. That it wasn't spelled out here, but it was defined elsewhere. And so in the state constitution of Colorado, it is protected. Protected. All right, next slide.
So the phrase gender identity, there we go, does not appear under this place of public accommodation, but the phrase sexual orientation does. State of Colorado Civil Rights Commission rules and regulations. So sexual orientation is defined as a person's orientation towards heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, transgender status, or another person's perception thereof. Okay.
All right,
There we go.
That's
There
it.
it is.
State law.
State law. We're very lucky.
We're
All right,
very
next slide,
lucky.
please.
Very lucky. All right, next slide.
So HB 1254 states that bullying is prohibited against any student for any reason. Again, lovely big umbrella there. States that, sorry, 2232-109 states that each Board of Education shall adopt written policies that schools in the district are subject to federal and state laws and constitutional provision prohibiting discrimination. So again, another blanket covering that we can use and we can, you know, enforce if we need to. So advocacy is really, really important if you feel that your child is being treated.
Yeah, you don't ever have to accept your child being treated differently. Take it as far as you can, right? Draw your boundaries and just say, this is it. And some schools are easier than others, right? Some administrators are easier than others. And just know that you've got helpers in there. And if you don't get the answers you want or the equal access to education or the treatment that your child deserves and needs, then there are ways for you to get outside help or even help within the school system.
Yeah. And we're happy to help guide with that too.
Yeah.
Equal Access Act, federal law that states that a public school cannot deny equal access or a fair opportunity to a student-initiated meeting or group on the basis of religious, political, philosophical, or other content of the speech at such meetings. Also states that if there is a non-curricular group or a club at school, the school must allow all non-curricular groups and clubs to be formed and hold meetings. So this means that, so when we were talking about the gender and sexuality alliances, there are occasions, and there have been times even within our district, where students have asked to start a gender and sexualities alliance, and they have been told no by administrators. This law protects that right for them to always be able to start that group. If there are other meetings that are being held that are non-curricular, that school has to abide by under this legislation, and they have to provide a space for these students to meet. In, you know, under the club name of a gender and sexuality or a diversity club, or however they want to describe it. Do you have stuff to add there, Tracy? Okay.
No, it was a lawsuit not too long ago brought in Florida that students who were in middle school, they were taking classes in high school, so they were deemed to be, you know, high school student as well, and that they couldn't be denied that right. So that extends to middle school as well. So middle school and high school, you cannot prevent that from happening if it's the policy to have, you know, other curricular, you know, non-curricular.
We've seen people get very, very creative with that too, which has been amazing, and we're seeing a much greater need now for those groups within elementary school too, which is fascinating. So we're working on that.
Yeah, so if anyone has interest or need at your specific elementary school or charter school, let us know, and we will help connect you with folks who are going through that same process, or maybe give you some ideas about how to approach it, where you can serve lots of students there in the community. Okay, Michael, I think this is you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
The Equal Access Act, just to follow on what Rebecca was saying, allows for the creation of GSAs in schools. Research has shown that having an active GSA in a school greatly benefits the mental health and academic success of LGBTQIA+ students. And there's even a study from the University of British Columbia which suggests that the behavior of adults changes when a GSA is in the school. They're more likely to intervene in bullying, and that the mental health of the entire student population is improved by the GSA. So, I mean, obviously the research is ongoing, but it's very interesting that the GSA has a much broader effect than you might imagine.
We've also seen stats that it's reduced that by having a GSA, the suicide rate of the school declines too.
Of all
Again,
students.
because of all
Of all
students,
students, yeah.
And again, we think that's because of the acceptance of diversity, sort of embracing diversity.
Yeah, and pushing kindness, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Addison. Next slide. All right, Michael.
Okay, so what about legal protections? We've been talking about just a few of the legal protections LGBTQIA plus people have in Colorado. We can't really provide exhaustive information here, but if you want more comprehensive information of how laws and policies impact the community, One Colorado, which is sort of the leading LGBTQIA advocacy organization in Colorado, has that information available on their website.
Yeah, they're a great resource. Okay, so local resources. So the good news is that you live in Colorado, and there are lots of great things happening. We, on the state level, we have one of the few elected transgender state representatives, and from Jefferson County, and we are very proud of that. She is amazing, Brianna Titone. And we also have quite a group of folks at the state legislature, both in both houses, who are working hard to make sure that they remove barriers for our queer families, whether it is from modernization of birth certificate processes, of getting an updated and accurate certificate, to protecting teachers, queer teachers who come out or who are known, they're known at school, who want to share their identity, or maybe a trans student asks a trans teacher about it, or something, right? Sharing that workplace protections. And we have really wonderful educators who are not only working and teaching, especially in this new time we're in, but also in their spare time, doing a lot of volunteer advocacy work to make sure schools are a safe place for educators as well, right? That's really important. But some of the local resources that we have, this is not an exhaustive list, and please know that if you wanted to get more information, even on a monthly newsletter, we send all sorts of information out, right? And that includes opportunities, social opportunities, opportunities for advocacy, for learning, a variety of things, right? Support. But some of the stuff that we share are these types of supports. We talked about it earlier about mental health challenges and supports for our youth. Colorado Crisis Services is very important, and here is, you probably already have this information. You can call or text these numbers 24/7. And there's a group called the Trevor Project, which is a national organization, and they offer crisis services to our queer youth, specifically to queer youth, right? So it's the phone bank, everything is run by queer folks for our queer youth. And that's 24/7. Youth can call or text or chat online, whatever's easier, okay? Trevor Project, amazing organization. Yes?
Sorry, I apologize for interrupting you. I just want to shout out Trevor Project because they've been doing ongoing research on youth. And they really, I mean, this kind of research is not the be all and end all, but it gives an important perspective on what's actually happening with our youth around how they identify, what behaviors they're engaging in. And they do provide more than crisis services. They actually provide comprehensive online community for all different parts of the family around the youth as well. They're one of the main organizations nationally that even has published a study about LGBTQIA youth experience under COVID. So they're really staying current with the times, and speaking from experience with our own organizations, it's very difficult to do that. So I just really wanted to promote them.
Thank you. And if you go on their website now, they just released the survey of the 2020 survey results for their LGBT health, state of LGBT queer youth mental health. There's another wonderful organization called Youth Scene, and Youth Scene centers rural LGBTQIA plus and communities of color. And that's youthscene.org. They've been around for a few years. TIES, another wonderful organization. They are support for families of trans and non-binary youth. You can contact them directly, or we can connect you if you need those services. There is another nice organization called Transgender Center for the Rockies. This is for folks who are 18 and over. So you may have older children, although we're doing this for our students who are currently students in Jeffco schools, but you may have older students as well. And there's that resource there. And don't forget places of faith, right? The UUs, all sorts of organizations, faith-based organizations have groups that help support their community, especially their queer community. Mile High Church, just as an example, they do have an LGBTQIA plus ministry and youth groups. So I think a common misperception or understanding is that there has to be a separation, or that sometimes places of faith would not be supportive of LGBTQIA plus identities, and that more and more is not the case, right? You can find safe places to practice your faith and also be accepted and seen and be who you are. So especially for families who have that kind of concern. And there you go. So here you go. So Helping Kids Thrive, the virtual expo. If you signed up for the virtual expo, we put in 10 or 12 different resources that you can print off, printable resources, and you can share that with your school. You can print it in your home, your places of faith, your work environment, your local rec center, what have you, right? Lots of places that could use this information. It is how, not only it's just basic like terminology, things that anyone can do today, talking about, it's huge. We actually, 3 of those resources we created ourselves, and we share those with the teachers in Jeffco to try and help support making their classroom a safe space, a safer space for our students. So just know that you have those resources as well. So here are some crisis services if you need: family support, youth support, medical support, faith support, also school support, right? And there's so much more. Okay, and now Rebecca and then Michael are going to share 2 great programs that are opportunities for our youth here in Jeffco, and we are excited to be a part of that. And they're part of a program that we are trying to nurture with having safe opportunities for our kiddos every weekend, social opportunities for them. And in addition to the ones that Rebecca and Michael are going to share with you, pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID here soon, we're going to be having our open mic nights again. So we at a local coffee house, Cafe Olé, wonderful local business. They have been hosting fun teen nights for our LGBTQIA plus youth and allies. So that would be the 4th Friday of the month. But I'll turn it over to Rebecca. She's going to tell you about a really great program that just launched a few months ago.
Thank you. So yes, this is being started by one of our amazing coalition members. There was definitely a need for our queer youth to be able to get together, and we're trying to sort of provide multiple opportunities for everybody to get involved and to be able to connect. As we said earlier, this need for connecting with the community and other queer youth for our children is really, really significant and important. So Jeffco Public Libraries now has a Read Out Proud book club. Their next meeting is October 6th. This is every 3rd Friday of the month, and it's for LGBTQ teens, LGBTQIA plus teens, and allies as well. So they get to read, they get to discuss books, and the books all have queer characters, authors. There are different themes, and it's a really lovely, safe space for them all to be able to share these experiences. they meet on Zoom, and the numbers are there if you want to screenshot this or access this later. But this is a phenomenal opportunity for youth within our county to be able to meet up and share some time and some space together.
Yeah, I think it's so great.
And the
folks at Jeffco Public Library are wonderful. We cannot sing their praises enough. The teen, the folks who work for our queer youth and the teen outreach, it's a big deal. We really appreciate them so much.
Yeah, and there is a whole world out there too. I realized my daughter was not exposed to a whole lot of queer authors until she sort of left high school, and there's a whole world out there. So it's really lovely to engage these young people younger. It's fantastic. Good representation.
All right, next slide.
Okay, so Seacrest Rec Center in Arvada has been doing this Teen Pride Night for some time now, and it's been wildly successful with the youth. They give a opportunity for them to come together and basically just have a good time. It's right now it's COVID safe in terms of requiring wearing masks, and it's always the second Friday of the month, 6 p.m. to 11. And if a $15 Pride box includes a craft for the night, extra goodies and snacks, and you can pay online or at the door. And there's some contact information, but we've been, and it's really fun.
It's really fun.
And if the cost is a barrier, then just contact Lena directly, and she will make accommodations.
She is lovely. And yeah, that $15 gets you, that's entry. So you get access to Fortnite, group games, movies, all the stuff, right? So it's a safe, fun place for your kiddos with their peers, which is what we want, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I think that kind of takes us to the very end. If you are interested in getting resources or just connecting, you need support for your family, you have questions about navigating the legal system, talking with school administrators, any of the things, we love to talk and we love to help folks out, and we want to connect people, and maybe I love to talk. And then we definitely are here, right? There's a group that is here to support you that already is in existence, right? And we're ready.
And we're quite lucky because very few school districts actually have this kind of engagement. So yeah, we just want you to know you are not alone on this journey. We really are here to support you and to share our experience and our knowledge to help make your journey easier.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for presenting. I feel like I walked away with a ton of information. I think one of the things that I'll keep in my mind a lot is the analogy that Rebecca used about, you know, the kick in the shin that becomes, you know, a little bit of a sting, and then a bruise, and then a wound. And I think that that's a really, really easy way to remember kind of how those small things impact people over the course of their entire life. I also really appreciate, I think you guys have great energy together. It was wonderful to listen to your presentation. I haven't seen any questions come in through the Q&A. If anybody would like to ask questions, we have some time now. It might be that you all had the most thorough presentation possible and answered all people's questions. We'll wait one moment and see if we have anything. If there's anything else that you felt like you didn't get to address, want to mention, we still have a few minutes.
We can always talk about stuff.
We can.
Endlessly. It's a beautiful topic.
The only other thing that I thought of is that we kind of skipped through was the sex ed piece. And I think it's really important to recognize that queer youth do not very often get the kind of information that is actually particularly relevant to their situation or their body, and it makes that navigating or just managing to keep channels of communication open between you and your child, and actually having to do the research to find the information that they need that is relevant to them, because risk factors of queer youth look different to risk factors of straight cisgender youth. And so I think that's really important too, and we can help with resources on that as well.
Yes, and
I do have one question. Oh, Tracy, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, to piggyback on what Rebecca said, that they're looking at seventh grade biology curriculum right now, and that they're always looking for, excuse me, my daughter is doing a crazy dance distracting me right now. Please go, I love you. Okay, sorry, she needs me to tuck her in. So that seventh grade biology curriculum, the schools are looking for input for parents to be able to help inform, or families to inform what it might be as far as queer competent, right? Something that would support our youth, right? To have an inclusive curriculum. Okay, sorry, Addison, go ahead.
We actually have two questions. I'll start with the one that came in first. Someone asked, how do you balance the fear that you have that, you know, your daughter may face of others, and the fact that people can be cruel?
That's a great question.
Great question. Yeah, it is a balance.
Mm-hmm.
It is a balance. People are cruel. Yeah, they say hurtful things, and there is anxiety around that. But that's not necessarily just a queer thing either, or a trans thing. I mean, all sorts of people deal with different things. So I think that creating that really safe space at home, creating those really good communications, making sure that they're telling you about these things, and then building resilience and good mental hygiene. I think those things can make an enormous difference. I do think from a parental perspective, there's often a lot of projected anxiety that is not helpful. And actually, I've found in our journey, my daughter's been incredibly resilient. And a lot of the things that I wondered or worried about haven't actually come to fruition. So I think it's, yeah, I don't know whether that answers the question really, sorry.
I think it, yeah, I think it does. I think also, I think you'll feel more secure if you are prepared, you know, if you take time to connect with your peers who are facing similar problems and sharing their experiences, what worked, what didn't work. Obviously, we want you to come to our meetings and do that. And, you know, don't isolate around the issues.
And there are, you know, there are online support groups too. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry.
There are some online support groups too that we can help connect you with on Facebook, you know, in addition to these national organizations, just for resources that kind of talk about these fears and how you go through all the worries and concerns, right? And then you can put that question out there. You can kind of lurk and just watch people's, you know, conversations, or you can put something out there and you can see, you'll have people answer you who have a similar situation, if you want to call it that, right? And who've had a variety of experiences. And just like Rebecca said, a lot of that stuff is worries that may or may not come true, right? But we want to protect our babies. So I totally understand that. But the more knowledge you have, the more connection you have, the more ways you can ground yourself, I think you'll be able to reach a little further.
Yeah, if I could collect a list of those resources from y'all, I will upload it to this platform, and it'll be in the resources section under the Jeffco Safe Schools Coalition. And then attendees can go in and access that after this presentation is over. So we'll have that up shortly.
Thank you. And we're happy to connect you with the diversity and inclusion specialist with the student engagement office as well. They're very helpful. If you have a specific issue with school, they will connect, and usually all they need to do is have a phone call. And right, so. Okay, you had another question, Anne?
Our other question is someone who had what I think is a very common question. They said, I don't understand they, them, their pronouns. Those are plural and my kiddo is singular.
It's a pretty common question. It's a common question, yeah? Yeah, I think it's a common question. You know, different people approach the question differently. Grammar specialists will point out that they, them has been used as a singular pronoun since the time of Shakespeare. You can find they, them used in the plays. I'm not sure how often, but it's in there somewhere. And I think it's more about getting used to using they, them pronouns to refer to your child. But if you think about it, you know, I might say I went to the doctor's office today and they really helped me. And by that, I'm referring to my doctor as a singular. Also, I think it'll help if you kind of practice with your friends using the pronouns that your child needs and wants you to use. Then it'll help you get used to it. I hope that's helpful.
I think you're right. I think a lot of it is practice, and it's also respect, right? It's like you said, if your child is asking you to use that, that means something to them. It makes them feel more comfortable, and then it's respectful to be able to use that. I think Michael's example too. I think we use it actually very commonly. It just is a matter of course. If I walk out of my house and there's keys on the ground, I'm going to say, oh no, someone dropped the keys. Oh no, that's going to ruin their day. It's a very, very natural thing that we actually use very commonly. And I think it is being used more and more these days, but I do think it bases on respect.
And also, I think I'd love to, in addition to what Michael and Rebecca just said, that with the respect piece, and we use they, them to refer to singular all the time, right? Like Michael's example was perfect. You know, the secretary for the, if the doctor calls, tell them, right? It's one person. But another piece I'd like to add is that if you're centering your child's experience, then you accept that. If you're centering your experience and what you think the things were, need to be said, that this doesn't make sense, or I don't understand that, then you're centering yourself. And it's really important to center your kiddo. And so if that requires a leap of faith or trust, then that's something that we as adults can work on. And out of love and grace and respect for our kiddos, I think that we can extend ourselves to do that. And that comes through practice. And just like telling a story where you just say they, right? And it's not your experience, it's not my experience for gender, right? But it's a real true thing. And you and I may never understand what that is like, but we know your child does, and they know it's real. And that's what we can trust and accept as truth, and not try to debate it because we really don't know. Right.
I just thought of another piece. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I interrupted you. No. I just thought of another piece of it. I think when you're talking about non-binary people, one key to understanding it, because it is, specific to non-binary people, but it's not rocket science. You can understand it, and depending on your relationship with your child, you might be in a position to ask them, what do these pronouns mean to you? And you may find yourself going on a journey of learning about why gender dysphoria, which we didn't really talk about that much, but why it's different for non-binary people, and why pronouns need to be different for related reasons. The affirmation that comes from having something that's located outside the binary, and the way the usage counters and acts as a shield against dysphoria, discrimination, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and a way to be seen for your true self, right? It's another way, just like clothing might be.
Yeah.
Or
And it
hairstyle.
comes back to, and I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that, you know, we're all so channeled into our culture and our society, and a lot of this journey is often about unlearning, just listening to the people and that you love and their life experience and what this feels like, and recognizing that you are on a journey too, and it's important to open your mind and start learning.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing us with parts of your lives and your experiences. And thank you to everyone who attended and asked questions. I'm going to wrap this one up really quickly. So thank you again, Tracy, Rebecca, and Michael. And thank you everyone for attending today. Don't forget to fill out the session evaluation link that I dropped into the chat. And then make sure you stop by that expo or the virtual resources hall. And that's going to help you find all those resources that we talked about. And then we will upload those links and get you connected to community partners, whoever you need to talk to. And then remember, no matter what you're facing in life, it's important to have the tools and resources that you and your family need to thrive. Jefferson Center is here for you. We are open, accepting new clients, and accessing care is easier than ever with virtual appointments. You can visit our website, jcmh.org, or follow us on Facebook for more resources and information. And you can also reach us by calling 303-425-0300. Thank you all again so much, and have a good night.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you.